All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. We're going to discover the power of storytelling, strategy, and creativity in building a strong and memorable brand identities. So let's get this episode started. Here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
Look, a business can give you everything you want in life: prestige, wealth, freedom. It can also take everything away from you. This show is for those who are willing to take that risk. These are the real life stories of entrepreneurs. But before we start, I have one small favor to ask. Please leave a comment. It can be advice, critiques, tips, feedback, or share this with someone because your engagement is the most valuable and most powerful form of social currency. So thank you, and welcome to another episode of Business Bros. Hi, Business Bros. Today we're going to get into the very cool world, the one I really like, which is called branding, man. We're going to talk about strategy and creativity with one of the industry's most respected voices. He has a remarkable journey from entertaining customers in front of a Chinese restaurant to guiding brands of all sizes and even advising politicians and athletes. Today, he's here to share his insights and stories about the art of branding. So without further ado, let's welcome to the show, Mr. Henry Wong. All right, Henry, here we go, man. Welcome to the program.
I feel like I should be taking a bow at this point with that amazing intro. Thanks very much for having me on your show. It's terrific to be here.
Of course, man. Of course. Well, take a bow and let's get going, man. Here we go. First question I always ask is: there's a reason why you're here. You're promoting something. There's something that you're up to that you want to get out into the public. So, what is that for you?
You know, I've just had a book published down in the U.S. I'm based here in Toronto, Canada, and it's all about storytelling and how to connect it with your brand. It's I have to admit, it's a little bit of a self-help book in that way. It's for those people who typically wouldn't be able to afford my services, but have access to hopefully some of the knowledge that can give them some insight into building their brand. And it's all done through storytelling. And that's really the basis of what I've learned over the years.
And stories are the best way to communicate with people. I mean, let's be honest. At the end of the day, I don't know if I really want to hear anything if it's not entertaining, if it doesn't educate me, if it doesn't do something for me. And a story does that. It gives you all those aspects so that you make a connection, which is an emotional connection. Because at the end of the day, when we buy stuff, we buy it emotionally. We rationalize it logically, but we buy it emotionally, and stories can kind of help us do a better job of getting that message out there. So let me ask you, when you work with companies on branding, what's the demographic that we're looking at there? Are we looking big corporations, small startups? Who do you work with?
So over the years, I've had the chance of working with some major brands. So through my career in the big agency world that I came from, it was the likes of Toyota and Procter and Gamble. I've taken a lot of that experience and learning, and these days I try to help more entrepreneurial type companies. But there's a little bit more of a defined box that I've been working in, and it's really those companies and those people who really want to have a positive impact on the world. So that's what gets me up in the morning, to be able to maybe help somebody or help somebody better the world in some way.
Well, tell me a little bit about that background. Working with companies, they're not small companies. Toyota, Procter & Gamble, those are some big names that you've been able to experience or be a part of that circle. What was that like, and what experiences did you have that kind of drove you to do your own thing?
Well, I think a lot of it, you get into this business largely because of the creativity. You get a chance to, if you think about it, have fun making commercials. I came from the days where, all you had to do was come up with a TV campaign and maybe a billboard. And then if you came up with a great idea, you spend the rest of the time in the bars. but through the years, it really, you learn that there is a discipline attached to it, that it isn't just sort of pie in the sky creative ideas, that it is really something that is more focused on strategy. So as I began working at, and I worked with one of the bigger firms, Saatchi, and they really sent me to their school to learn all about strategy. But as I began to understand it a little bit more, I began to focus on what made things really interesting. So the best work I did, the best sort of ideas I had, were often based on commercial stories of some sort, being able to tell a story within 30 seconds. So I became very good at capturing all of that. So whether it was selling dandruff shampoo or a car, I always try to find a way to hook people in with that element of a story. And that's really what the power of a brand can do. They can hook you in, connect you emotionally, exactly what you said, to be able to connect better with the brand.
Let's kind of clarify branding and marketing, because I think oftentimes, especially with startup entrepreneurs, we kind of want to do it all, right? We want that marketing, we want that ad, we want that branding, but I think there needs to be clarity on what it is and the time frame it takes to actually develop those things. So when we talk about branding, when you're talking about branding in this situation, what is it that you mean, and what can like an entrepreneur kind of expect when building their brand?
I think the mistake often people think of when they consider a brand is that, oh, this is my logo, this is my tagline, that's a brand. It's much more than that. Those are really just the foundational pieces. It's really understanding where your position is in the market. How do you compete against the other guys out in the marketplace? Where can I stand out a little bit more? How can I express myself in such a way that people connect with me? So I use that process to take many clients and many brands through that, so that they become more pronounced in being able to articulate it. Once you figure all that out, now you have a story. You have a key message, you have a position. How do you express it? And that comes from the key message in which you can now derive the story. Once that story is set, now how do I bring it to market? And that's really where the media form comes in. And that's where the marketing side of it really comes into play. And many people jump immediately to marketing tactics before really considering what they're all about. I get a great deal on radio ads, let's say, or I get a great, social media is free or PR is free. But it may be free, but it may not be the right medium by which you want to communicate to your audience. So first and foremost, figure out the brand first, and then go to the marketing tactics itself.
Yeah, the brand is difficult to kind of figure out early on, because you're right. It is, everybody goes to the logo, everybody does go to the color, but there's more. There's so much more to it. And as you learn that working with some of these companies, at one point you decided, you know what, I'm going to leave this. I'm going to go kind of do this thing on my own. What happened? What was the transition to leave a job that you were probably doing well at, that you enjoyed already doing, to go kind of venture off and do it on your own?
I think, to tell you the truth, at the time, it was really ability to be more present for my family. And that, first and foremost, was really key at that time. The life of whether you're working for a big accounting firm, a big law firm, or a big ad agency, it's really all time consuming. And as wonderful it is, as ego fulfilling as it is, you really lose sight of what's truly important in life. In many times, I had the keys to the world, being able to, get the best seat in the restaurants, being on various media on TV, being honored with awards and all of that. But as you come to realize, certainly as you get older, it's much more than that. And it's really, by going entrepreneurial, by setting off on my own, I was able to hopefully connect better with my family again. And then through the years, I have bought and sold agencies. I have worked with a number of brands, invested in many companies along the way. You get to a point where you realize that there's much more to life. So a number of years ago, I had a partner, and unfortunately, he passed away. He went through a bout of dementia and Alzheimer, and at that point, after he passed away, I realized that I had to do my own reset in life as well. So I relaunched a company under the brand View, VYOO, which is my branding and consultancy agency. And I decided that I would pare it down and only work with brands that wanted to have a positive impact on the world. And it became, in many ways, so in spite of my sort of boyish looks, I've been long in the tooth, many years in the business. And I realized that at this point in my life that I really want to have a good impact on the people that worked around me and connect with those people. And rather than, the funny thing that happened was, rather than began to cut down on business, I found the opposite happened. It actually increased the amount of people interested in me. And I'm at a point where I'm actually turning more work away than actually taking it on. And it made me realize, and this is something really I want to share today, is that when you have a really strong mission or a goal, a directive, people will come along if they believe in what you're doing. And this is what I believe in. And I don't need to, and like many of your listeners, you don't need to be everything to everybody. You really just need to be the right thing to the right people. And that can be quite satisfying in its own right.
Now you are at the point now where you're being picky with the business that comes in. You're not taking on every single client, but you also want to be able to help every single client, which brings us to the reason why you ended up writing this book. So, how do you
Exactly.
use this book, or how can somebody use this book to kind of help take them from maybe they're not creating a brand, they don't know what to do, to now they have something that's, posting on social media on a regular basis, telling good stories, generating leads, all through story?
It really is a step-by-step guide on manifesting your story. So, in the beginning, chapter by chapter, I take people through a lot of the steps that I go through with my clients. And the first part is taking stock of what you're all about, figuring out how you fit in the marketplace, doing a lot of self-analysis, getting people to input and provide a perspective on what you're all about. That's really the market research in a way. Once you determine where you sit in the market, how do I position myself? What is a message that I need to express? And that, step by step, I take people through that. I have elements that help you formulate the story, formulate what you're all about, what makes you unique. There's a really interesting exercise, and I'll share this with you and your listeners, and that is expressing yourself in 6 words. Most of the time when you meet somebody, you go, hey, tell me about yourself. And first thing they do is begin this sort of long history and litany of their accomplishments and that. And no doubt at some, within 10 seconds, you are kind of eyeing the craft table, or where I can get a drink, because you haven't connected with the person. So the first thing is to really try to understand what you're all about so you can properly connect with people. So being able to express yourself in 6 words is a wonderful discipline, because it focuses the message. And it's really based again on my experience in advertising. On a billboard, for example, if you're driving down a street, down a highway, you really have that few seconds to take in what that message is about. Any more than 6, 7 words, and then you've lost it. Any more than a single image, and you're really not paying attention. So the idea is really to focus on that key message. And if you can begin expressing it, then you have the basis or that start point to what your story is all about.
Isn't it amazing how when you think about the 6 words that you have to condense yourself to, how much effort it actually takes to do that? It's not as easy as it sounds. 6 words, you're like, oh yeah, I can think of that. But to make it so that it's like that elevator punch, right? Where it's like, this is what I do. And people are like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. That's not as easy as it sounds. It takes quite a bit of effort. And so when people get started, you've already told us a little bit about, what branding is, and some of the early misconceptions for branding. We've talked a little bit about condensing things down to that 6 words so that we have a clear message, a clear thing that we talk about on a regular basis. But if somebody was going to get started today, they're starting their business, and they've heard, okay, I got my logo squared away, got my colors squared away, I got my message down to 6 words. What advice would you give them to get started? Where do they go? Do I create a YouTube channel? Do I create an Instagram channel? How do I get my story heard?
Yeah, and I think that's a challenge for almost every business owner out there, because there's no shortage of choices. And you've just touched the surface of all the things that I could potentially either put my time or money towards. The first thing that I often advise clients is know thy audience. Know who it is you're after. You're not going to be everything to everyone, but you will be the right thing to the right people. So understanding who that audience is, whether I'm a carpet cleaning service or a full out, a tech company, know who the audience is. And because with every group, there's always a core group of initial customers that you can immediately gravitate to. Once you begin to understand that, and if you run Google ads or you're on Facebook ads, you're often asked to form a persona of what that customer is. So in doing that, you really become clear on who you're appealing to. And hopefully they're the ones that you want to sell to, that they're the ones that you would get up in the morning to service, of course. So those are the people that once you understand them, you walk a mile in their shoes, essentially, and see what sort of media habits they go through. What do they consume? So if I'm, let's say, going after a soccer mom who drives their kids to school every day and manages to run the household, what's a path that she goes through? In the car, maybe it's at the house listening to a podcast, listening to radio, understanding all of that makes a huge difference, because now I know where I can intercept that person with the message, because there's nothing worse than spending money putting a message out there that nobody hears. So by understanding who it is you're talking to, you can hopefully know the points in which you can connect with them with that type of media. And sometimes it's social media, sometimes it's a newspaper ad, sometimes it's TV. But again, all of that comes in play with both budget and being able to target. And that's a wonderful thing, of course, with Google Ads and the like, because you can target all of that just simply because everybody's on the internet. Everybody Googles something. And if you understand and learn those basic foundational things within Google, that's a good place to start. And then from there, you can grow out.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Where can I be found? Yeah, it's where the eyes are. So we're all on Facebook, we're all on Instagram, we're all on TikTok, we're all on Google, but where your specific customers hanging out, well, that's the information we want to get down to the down and nitty gritty to. Now, there are a number of different coaches, a number of different places where we can go to get help with story and branding, but there's a reason why customers come to you. There's a reason why your clients are coming your way. What do you feel you do best? Maybe that's that 6-word question, right? But what do you feel you do best and is the reason why clients come to you?
I jokingly say I'm really good at making things up, but it's obviously a little bit more than that. I think it's, again, being in this business so long that I've had a chance to see a lot of businesses grow and succeed, and see a lot of businesses fail, and understanding that has made a world of difference in terms of advising people. So often what I do before I even take on a client is I'll spend an hour a meeting with them. It's really just a time to provide free advice. There's no obligation for me to or them to take me on, but I love listening to where they got their start and what their challenges are. And I can often, based on the experience I have, provide those types of insights. From that, we can determine, where we could possibly go from there. But essentially, it really comes down to being able to understand each of the markets in itself, whether it's business to business or whether it's business to consumer or strictly, a PR gambit. All of that is just different media forms in which to get the message out. So I think if anything, and maybe it just simply comes from, I think, ever since I was a kid, I was just simply that curious George, putting my fingers and hands in places I shouldn't have been, but at the same time, it helped satisfy an intellectual curiosity that I think has benefited me to this day.
That experience goes a long way, though. I mean, anytime you're able to be trained, especially by big companies, they spend a lot of money in research and understanding their customer and then creating the stories that go along. That's an education in and of itself. And that has huge value, especially when you take it from the corporate world and now implementing it for some of these smaller businesses. That is a huge value add. Now, I feel like every entrepreneur, once they get really good at something, they're always trying to do that next thing. That next thing could be, how do I get something better for my clients? It could be, how do I make things more efficient for my business? What is it that you feel you're helping or you're looking to improve upon to either bring the customers or your clients a little bit more value, or maybe to make your organization a little bit more efficient?
I think a lot of it is just helping find their way into the marketplace and being able to stand out. And quite often, it's being able to lock into something that something that maybe people haven't considered. And that's the beauty of creativity. So there's set sort of regiments of things that you do, and there's best practices, as we know from marketing. There's always that element of creativity that if you can find that gap and be able to fill it with something that is a little bit more unique or connect people with it, then that's where really it begins to lift off into another stratosphere. If we look at content these days, a lot of it is just based on some wonderful trends, and eyeballing that certainly helps. Taking a look at the types of messages that people put out, but ultimately, to me, it still comes back to just wonderful storytelling. So whether it's short form in social media or long form in extended videos, really what it comes down to, if you have a good story, people will pay attention to it, and it really doesn't matter what format it is.
No, you're absolutely right. A good story is very captivating, and that's evident by pretty much any time you stop scrolling on like TikTok or Instagram Reels. You usually stop because there's a good hook, and you get hooked into the story. Now you want to hear it to the end. Sometimes there's that part 2 and part 3. That means the story's really good, and you're over there
Yeah.
looking for those things. So
Either that or a good cat video, right? Yeah.
exactly. Either that or a good cat video. A good cat montage works for me too. But even when you tell a story like a monologue, earlier you talked about monologuing, and I remember the first thing that popped into my head was the scene from the movie Incredibles, where they're like, the bad guy's talking, and what happens? He starts monologuing. I thought, that's usually what ends up happening with a lot of these social media posts, and some of them flop and some of them do well. And I think the difference is the ones that can engage in a good story capture that audience, and now they can utilize that attention, which is essentially what brands are doing. They're capturing your attention and then guiding you towards a particular outcome in their story and associating their brand with that feeling that you have on the end. You've been at this for quite some time. Where do you see your company today, and what's the vision of it in the next couple years?
I think it will continue along this line. I've had the wonderful benefit of mentoring a lot of terrific people who've gone on to very successful careers. So I continue to see my place as a breeding ground for some great talent, being able to give people the opportunity to grow their careers, grow their skill set, and be able to maybe under my tutelage and mentorship, be able to be a little bit better than perhaps they started. So, but a lot of it is really being able to teach that sort of discipline. As many probably business owners know, there's no value in a business where everything comes back to you as the principal of the company. So setting a method, setting a process that everybody else can follow is extremely important. And for me, I think it is continuing to advise. Now, this is a terrific business. And you look at the likes of, Charles Munger, for example, who passed away recently. I mean, somebody in their 90s still advising people on investment is just phenomenal. And that's a sort of idea. And I think creativity never really dies if you keep it active. The best creative people, artists, architects are often in their 70s and 80s. And so that shows a long sort of runway that hopefully I can continue along that path. And that's really what I'm hoping to do, is to be able to continue to write and share these ideas and thoughts with people that hopefully will, impact their life in a positive way.
Yeah, those standard operating procedures kind of really lift a big burden on a lot of these small businesses. Once you have those systems in place, it gives you that time freedom that you're looking for. And it's funny that you mentioned, being able to work into your 80s and 90s. A lot of people think of working that late as despicable. No, I want to retire and get out of it. But what I think people forget is every man needs a purpose to wake up to every single day. Without purpose, there's no point in waking up. And those are the people that tend to die. So having something
Absolutely.
to look forward to get up in the morning that excites you, that's huge. That's going to keep you young. That's going to keep you going. And I feel like that's kind of what you've designed here in your agency is exactly that. I have systems and processes in place to help my clients, but at the same time, it sounds like you want to be in that advisory role for as long as you possibly can, because it brings you joy. It's like one of the most selfish things you can do. Did I hear you correctly on that?
Yeah. Being selfless is actually a bit of selfishness because it satisfies my own desires, if you will. So a lot, you touched on a really good point, and that is having purpose to get up in the morning. And I think many business owners often forget that they should also have a purpose for why their company exists. It isn't necessarily to make money, but often it's to satisfy a passion or to solve a problem out in the world. It's to make the world a better place for in some quarters. So having that purpose is, I think, fundamental to your brand, because that's the spark really that ignites the rest of it. The stories and everything are just really media by which you get the point across. But without that purpose, without that mission that you have, you're really just sort of floundering. So I highly encourage that from the very beginning to focus on why you exist. Why should I take you seriously?
That why is important. That purpose is important. It's what's going to get you from point A to point B on those days you just don't feel like it, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of days you're not going to feel like it, but the purpose is going to drive you. That discipline is going to get you there. So make sure you guys take that little motivation right there, right? And work on that, right? Have that purpose. Figure out why you're doing it. I promise you it'll fuel you to keep going forward. Henry, if people want to reach out, they want to work with you, they want to get a copy of your book, they want to find out more what you're about, how can they do that?
Hey, you've been excellent in putting my URL across the bottom, henrywong.co. That leads to my book site and my contact information, and then it leads to my agency. So if people want to reach out, I'm there, and hopefully, I'd be very happy to connect with people, because I just love hearing about people's journeys, particularly entrepreneurs, and where they're at. So, if people are so inclined, there I am, and very happy to connect back.
Perfect. All right, ladies and gents, look, every consultant, every mentor, I always feel like you've got to have a conversation with a few people, because some of them you're not going to connect with and some of them you do, but you're not going to know unless you reach out. So his website scrolling across the bottom, henrywong.co. Make sure you guys pop on over, check out what he's got to offer. You never know. It could be the story that changes your life. Henry, thank you very much for being on the program today. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace. And we're out.
It's over. Go home.
Is your business in need of marketing? Try starting a podcast, but not just any podcast. Podcast like a pro. We can show you how to take your business from being invisible to becoming a brand people trust. Go to www.businessbros.biz